Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Son of a Blitch podcast. I'm your host, George Blitch. Today, I got to sit down with Rob Gearing, who is the owner and operator of Spartan Precision Equipment. One of their flagship products is the Javelin Bipod, which you can see here. Many of you guys may be familiar with this. He's been on a lot of different podcasts and featured in a lot of outdoor industries out here, and they are really gaining a lot of traction. That is just one of the many products they have. They also have tripods, and they have different adapter systems for your optics, for your binoculars, for your cameras. I use them a lot on my rifles. There's a little adapter that you can put on the bottom of your stock, whether you have a sling swivel stud or a pick rail. It goes on the bottom. It's kind of a female counterpiece. And then, you can be able to slide in your bipods and tripods into that with rare earth magnets. And so they are basically, you don't have to have a bipod on the bottom of your rifle that you're carrying around anymore. You want to cut that weight, or you want to, decrease the burden that is having something on there all the time against your shoulder. This is the system for you. Super lightweight, strong, stupid strong. These are they are perfect for in the field. They're perfect for if you're hunting stationary, in a deer blind or whatever. There's systems for everything. It's like Legos, right? As he talks about in this interview, there's something for everyone, and you can be able to piece together what it is you need for your particular purpose. Once again, I'm super honored to have him on here. I hope you guys enjoy this podcast. Please, if you haven't yet, subscribe to this channel, subscribe to this podcast, like it, leave reviews, share it with your friends, and make sure you guys go over to javelinbipod.com and check out all the wonderful things that Spartan has created. Go follow them on their socials. And I hope you guys really enjoy this podcast. This was a real fun one. So without further ado, here it is. And once again, thanks for tuning in.
There's 56,000 firearms license holders in the UK out of 70 million people. And can you imagine that? So hardly anybody, Skip, forgive me too, I never get anybody knock on the door. I don't know what's going on.
It's all right. It's all good.
Hardly anybody shoots. Relative to the populace in the UK, it's a pretty elite little thing to get into. So I always bang on about how lucky I think you guys are compared to what we've got. And I'm not, there's things in the States that I don't necessarily agree with.
Sure, same here.
But the fact that, anybody can really go and pick a rifle up and go and hunt on is pretty awesome. And if you've got that kind of dynamic at play, it means that I think people don't resent it. What happens here, it's very easy to resent your things you can't do. And I got a bit of a kickback from the Steve Ranella thing where a few people in Britain said, well, you're wrong. And I said, well, wrong compared to what? And then when you interview these people, one of them's been shooting rats for the farmer for 6 years before he actually goes out to deer hunt and such, like when you dig it. And that's the kind of challenge you get over here. So very different. But yes, there are professional hunters in the UK because there's so small numbers. And we have a lot of forests. We have a lot of arable crops, so we have to be on top of them.
Sure.
And they're everywhere. There's a lot of fallow deer around here, less roe, muntjac, but it's a proper job. Yeah.
Gotcha. And so is that something that somebody has sought out you personally, or is it kind of like you and your buddies are a collective and you're
So what will happen is, there are a couple of estates that we manage. Uh-huh. So the estate will basically say, can you manage the deer? Some of them are paid, some of them aren't paid. So some are volunteers. All the carcasses go back into the larder because we can sell that meat into the food chain here. It goes through a game dealer. So it's very, very different protocol to what you guys are used to.
Right.
So like, for example, there's a lot of Swedes that come over and help us, but they'll shoot 200 deer in a weekend. Between maybe 12 people. You wouldn't do that every weekend, but if you could do that twice a year, it's going to really help manage the numbers.
Yeah.
If that makes sense.
No, I understand, especially like here in Texas, we have, there's some ranches we've mapped that are, hundreds of thousands of acres, and they have a certain protocol of how many does and bucks. And there's people that are out there at shooting 60, 70 a day. And then, a lot of times it'll go maybe if there's excess, there'll be like hunters for the homeless and things that are, kind of giving out things to try to, help local communities. But it's the same thing about, managing that herd. And it's important.
Yeah.
People think, oh, they're bloodthirsty, they're trying to kill as many animals as possible. No, it's about managing the resource, right?
I actually posted some stuff probably a couple of years ago, because I'm not doing much now because I'm very rarely in the UK. I'm more on more often on your side of the pond. And I posted something, and you were an arable farmer in this part of the world. It's an uphill struggle. I mean, you're really up against it. So where my oldest daughter used to live, they got barley growing out there, or wheat or whatever. We counted 140 fallow deer in that field. 140. There aren't any crops left at the end of the season. And if they are, they're contaminated. So we've lost the race, to be honest. There are so many deer here now. It's quite crazy. And when I was doing the deer management, you're right, I think the number would have been about 8 of us, and we'd shoot 320 deer a year between those 8. And then we might do a couple of driven days, where we're managing deer. But it's not enough. We haven't even kept on top of the situation, and there's more building work going on. So they're pushed into tighter areas. It's not a good situation, really. And really, one of the ways of managing deer in this part of the world is road traffic accidents.
Sure.
The number of cars that hit, it's probably a bit like Wisconsin or one of those states, on the east side.
Oh, yeah.
It's just there's so many deer. You get it's an occupational hazard. Me driving to work, I'm going to hit a deer maybe once every 2 years. If I'm it's going to be that sort of number. And if I'm riding a motorbike, I ride it very diligently across the forest and sort of like an old man. Well, I'm an old man, but do it at 30 miles an hour. So I think because they just pop out from everywhere. Yeah.
So what do you see personally as like what is the solution in your mind, being in the forefront of that and seeing this, and kind of being hired, and like, what do you see could be a fix or an improvement that needs to happen in order to kind of have a better management system and less of these incidents like you're talking about?
Well, that's a really good question. And there's probably several answers I could give to you. I mean, what I would love to see in the UK is that we've got a lot of public land. It would be wonderful to open up some of that public land to the opportunity for people to hunt. I would love people to engage more with hunting, because it's got such a almost devil-like name to it over here, because people don't understand. From meat eaters, that's what really gets me. I mean, sure, if you're a vegan or vegetarian, you're entitled to your views. I'm entitled to mine.
Yeah.
But when somebody's stuffing a burger in their face or a KFC and they're telling me I'm cruel, I struggle with that. That presses my buttons, and I go, right, come and have a day with me, and then go and spend a day on a chicken farm, and then we'll revisit this argument.
Absolutely.
It's just so. I would love a bit of public land opportunity over here. I don't ever see it happening realistically. I think the quality of the deer hunters in the UK tends to be very good, the ones that do it, because they're shooting a lot of animals. So you build up a skill set. And it's obviously a perishable skill set, because if you're not doing it all the time, when I go out now, I feel rusty. I'm not as quick as I was because I'm not doing it all the time. But the guys that I was dealing with, they become very effective at doing relatively quick shooting, well, safely, and with the desired result, which is a dead deer at the end of the day. But yeah, public land would be wonderful. More opportunity for younger people to get into it, proper pathways in, rather than having to know a farmer or a landowner or a estate manager. If you're little Jimmy in the middle of London, it's really difficult for little Jimmy to think one day, get up and say, I want to go deer hunting. Well, you can do it if you've got some dollar, right? But it's not like it is in the States. And it won't be, because you've got a massive, the UK, you could probably fit into Texas. Right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people on it. We do have some wonderful opportunities here, but it's just challenging to get into. And getting hold of a firearm is another issue. You've really got to jump through some hoops to actually get a license to be able to buy a rifle. That is not a 5-minute roll.
Yeah, what's that look like there? I mean, for a lot of our listeners here are, I do have international folks here that'll be listening, but a lot of them are coming here from the US and they don't understand, it's a whole different ball game here. So walk us through that. What is that like?
So to walk you through that, if I get out one bed one day and think, right, I want to go deer hunting, right? First off, you're probably going to have to join a rifle club or Bisley, or sort of get somewhere where you can get some experience and learn how to use a rifle. That's not easy because we don't have the ranges like you've got there. So that's a challenge. So you've got to join the National Rifle Association or something. If you want to shoot at Bisley, there might be smaller local clubs that you can get involved in. You probably start with a 2.2 rimfire. Then you'd apply for your license. Now, you're not legally obliged to do it, but the police will probably insist now that you have to do a British deer stalking exam. And there's 3 levels of it. I think the level 1, level 2, and there's a management course. Now, they're very good, actually, and that gets my vote because that stops people going out and doing stuff they don't, it's an education process. It's got a bit about the food processing, how you manage the deer after it's shot. A lot of safety, is involved in that, on how to handle a rifle, what you should do, what you shouldn't do. It's not all encompassing. It's not as thorough as something like in Sweden or Germany. If you do a hunting exam there, that's much more holistic. That'll be about all sorts of things. The deer hunting exam is just about deer. So it'll cover the species of deer that we've got in the UK, what the seasons are, what the legal calibers are to shoot them, and how to go about it. But it doesn't give you a doorway into going deer hunting. There isn't the public land. So getting back to it, I get my firearms license after I prove to the policeman that I'm sane, fit and able, right? He will then insist I do the deer stalking exam. He will then probably insist that I go out with somebody that knows about deer hunting. There's a big challenge because when there's so few of them, right, they're all probably pretty busy guys. So I know a lot of people that contact me and say, I'd love to get into this, Rob. How do I do it? And there isn't an honest answer. I can say, speak to Joe Blogs. If you've got 250 quid, let's say circa $300, or maybe a little bit, you'll find somebody that's going to take you out. Now, that person might be very good or they could be very bad, but it's going to cost you some money. So from day one, when I get out of bed and want to do it, to where I'm actually have the opportunity to go and hunt something, I think you're probably realistically looking at least a year before you can do anything. It's so it wears people out. So people don't want to go through that. They've got other things to do and they think, it's just too much hassle. You could go out with a deer hunter without a license. And so I could go up to Scotland and go to an estate and say, I want to shoot some stags or some hinds. They'll take you out. You'll use their rifle and they'll guide you. And there's some great people that do that. But again, it's challenging to do it in an economic way. Yeah.
And then how do the licensing works there? Like obviously here you're buying a tag from your state. There's certain allotments of, numbers you're supposed to get, but like over there, what does that look like as far as the licensing and for the species? Is there?
No, so it's completely different. So we don't get tags, right? At the end of the day, we have seasons for the deer like you do. We don't have bow, so we can't. There's no bow season. I'd love to do bow hunting over here, because fallow deer during the rut, that would just be mega with a bow. But anyway, that's another argument. We can have a whole podcast on that. I'm addicted to the bows now. But basically, there are no tags. So you take, for example, muntjac, which was an Asian deer introduced, I think, back in the 40s, escaped. They're everywhere now. They have an open season on those things because they're normally pregnant within 3 days of giving birth. So they have no breeding season. And they're a pretty pesky little animal. They eat a lot of good, interesting plants and dig up a lot of stuff. But the continentals love to come over and hunt them and hunt them. And for me, I'm not that fussed about because they're so small, they're hardly worth pulling a shot. It's a bit like shooting something the size of a little tiny terrier.
Yeah.
It's anyway, and they're good fun to hunt because they're always on the move. So you've got to be on them. But then, like the true native species, like the roe, which is about the size of a Labrador, our red deer vary in size depending on whether they're down on the southwest or they're up in Scotland. Same species, same genetics. It's just in Scotland, it's a tough life because even if the sun's out, it's raining. Right? Yeah. So they're permanently wet. There's not good food for them, so they don't put the weight on. So a red deer stag in the southwest could be twice the size of something you get up in Scotland. And it's completely different dynamic hunting them, but no tags. So seasons, and there's no limit. A bit like you were saying earlier about places in Texas where they agree numbers. So we'll go to the estates that we work on and say, well, what's the target today? And they'll say, well, okay, this year we want to shoot 300 roe deer, does, and maybe the same number of roes, a bad example, let's say fallow deer. So maybe we want to shoot 300 fallow deer, right, of which a certain percentage will be males, certain percentage females, some calves, and then you try and stick to that protocol. And they do the same up in Scotland. But it's not like a case of a guy going to get his elk tag and he's allowed to shoot one elk of a certain criteria. It's completely different. That's completely alien to how we do things, because basically we want them on the ground dead. And if you start doing too much of that, we're just not going to get the numbers. If I go out to shoot, to manage deer, if there's 5 deer in front of me, I probably will want 5 dead deer in front of me. Now, there might be reasons I say, no, I'm not going to shoot that one or not that, or if there's a nice trap, because we still get continentals that want to come over and shoot a nice big fallow buck. So I'm not going to shoot the big fallow buck. I'll leave it for somebody else, but I might take the poorer ones. So it's more a case of managing the damage to the crops, managing the damage to the trees, and basically just controlling that environment really, and putting meat in the larder that then the game dealer will buy, and it's some revenue back to the estate, which we don't see. That goes back to the estate. So
like in Texas, for instance, we have, feral hogs. And obviously the whole country pretty much has them now, and that's, 24/7, 365, you take them out. There's no limitation because they're an invasive species, and, they do so much damage, and really, hark upon our indigenous animals here and the native animals. Like when you're talking about like the idea of management and taking these animals out, I understand on the invasive species, hey, take as many as you can, whatever you're trying to minimize your damage. But as far as on your native species there, is it by a state that there is this management system of like what they want to keep because it sounds like there's no overall structure of management in that sense. And it's more like, how does that work?
Exactly right. We don't have, I think what you do in America is really good. And I'm going to congratulate, you have a lot of biologists, a lot of scientists, a lot of people saying, well, this area is going to hold this many deer. It's obviously the best guess at the end of the day. So we should do this. And we don't have that kind of science over here.
Okay.
There isn't that kind of money going into back into the hunting industry, because there aren't that many people that are buying hunting tags or anything like that. It tends to be privately managed estates getting money to take people out, clients, it's called clients, to go out hunting. They might pay 200 or 300 quid or a lot more in some cases to go and hunt on a particular estate. So it's very much left to the individual estates. Now, collectively, if we look at Scotland, they'll be a bit more organised and structured, and they will look at each estate, and the estates will all speak to each other. Okay. They might not agree, right? So, Scotland's an interesting one at the moment, because you've got half of Scotland trying to reforest, right? And half of Scotland that wants to run deer stalking. And the two don't necessarily mix very well. So if you get some of these estates, they want to really hit the deer hard because they want to plant a lot of native timber. And then other estates, the revenue they get from the clients coming up to shoot the red deer is really valuable to them. And it's a tough thing running an estate. You wouldn't do it to make money. Right. You do it because you like running an estate.
Yeah, and you want to keep it in the family, or
yeah.
Right.
It's almost, I've got to that stage where if it flies or floats, rent it, right? And I like to go on this, but as a kid, the thought of having an estate up in Scotland was a wonderful dream, an aspiration that I never achieved. Thank God I never achieved it, because I'd be super skilled now. But I love those places and the dynamics. But basically, Scotland does, they will speak to state, and they'll agree in an area, like, and they'll say, right, okay, we've got 130,000 red deer here. We need to get it down to this number, and they'll work collectively together. I'd say in the south, in the UK, in England, we're not as well structured at that, and it's basically, we've missed the boat. There are so many deer now. It's not. You're not going to worry about impacting the numbers of fallow deer where I live, because we're not. It's a bit like your hog situation in Texas. You could go out and shoot hogs every day for the rest of your life, and you're probably not going to touch the sides.
Right.
Yeah. So I would imagine, I'm not saying it's as bad as that, but the fallow deer, as a kid growing up here, I would see fallow deer now and again. I said, that's good. Now they're everywhere. I could take the camera out within half an hour and we'd find some. So they're there and they're up. And fallow, actually, it's interesting because you're saying about indigenous. Fallow aren't truly indigenous to this country. They were brought over, arguably, by the Normans or the Romans. Nobody's really sure which, but they weren't true. They are considered native because they've been here for such a long time. But the only true native deer we've got are roe and red. And then all the others have come in or joined, at a later. Well, they're long enough. They're considered, but
they get grandfathered in, right? But
exactly. They're in the club now, but for me, it almost got like managing cattle. It's just I love hunting roebuck. I love hunting roe deer because they're a fairly solitary animal. They're small. They're very packable. You go out for an evening, it's like shooting a Labrador-sized deer. It's very easy to process and put it in, and you're gone and you're done and dusted. Fallow round here can start getting quite heavy because their diet has changed because they're eating so much arable crop. We don't have the hard winters that we used to. So they're doing pretty well. Yeah, they're doing pretty well.
So how did, in a land where there is not as much opportunity as you were saying, there's not as many licensed, firearm hunters out there. How did you get your start, getting into this outdoor hunting, lifestyle?
Very good question. So for me, as a young guy, I had an air gun. So we'd go out and shoot pigeons and, do it in little, often illegally. We weren't allowed to be there, right? At 59, I feel safe fessing up now.
The statute of limitations, you're fine. You're fine. I won't tell anyone.
Sorry, but I've done a lot of poaching in my time. But you all grow up with air guns, and most people leave it there, or they get more and more expensive air guns. There's a lot of air guns bought in the UK because people can't get that opportunity easily to get into the hunting world. So they'll get really expensive air guns. They might do a bit of squirrel shooting. They might get out in places where farmers want squirrels and pigeons, man. That is easier. But for me, I got into climbing because it was so difficult to get into hunting. And to be honest, whether you put fishing fly rods in my hand, rifle or ropes, I'm equally happy, because what I'm happy at is just being outdoors with, either on my own or with a few like-minded individuals. And at my age, it's taken me some time to learn this, but it's basically, they're just the excuse to go on a great adventure, aren't they? I honestly, and I say this to people, I've had some of the best hunting experiences in my life where we haven't pulled the trigger.
Sure.
But, floating down Frank Church Wilderness, 8 days and not running into a person is pretty epic for me. And then I took myself off on my own for a night or so, and just wonderful. And you think, well, this is heaven. This is all right. Didn't see any elk. You get a tag to shoot wolves, so you get paid to shoot the wolves. We didn't see any wolves either because they probably killed each other and all the elk have gone. So that was quite sad. But because I met some old boys there that said, if you were here 20 years ago, it's always a bit like that. But they said there were elk everywhere. But really, really tremendous experiences. So I just want the excuse to go and play. And at my age, I've got different drivers. You know, if I was 29, 30, I'd have a very different sort of probably attitude and approach to life. But right now, I want to be out playing while my knees and hips still work. Because guess what? One day they won't.
Sure.
So I'm quite lucky like that. So Spartan, getting back to your question, I've sort of gone down a rabbit hole.
It's all good.
I got into climbing, loved climbing. It became, I was addicted to it and such like. And then I met a few friends that did a bit of deer management, bits and pieces, and managed to get myself in the back door and really started that quite young, not super young, but maybe late 20s, early 30s, and got passionate about it. So deer hunting, climbing, fly fishing, all of those things have been a big part of my life. And I've been very lucky. But I've been very lucky because I've got to know the right people, either landowners, estate managers, and blah, 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 and just ended up knowing a great bunch of people that are like-minded and had a lot of fun in the process. So that's been really cool for me. Well, but I would be the first to admit I've been very lucky to have those relationships and get presented those opportunities.
No, man, it's a blessed thing. I mean, I'd look at how I grew up. I have 2 family ranches, and I just grew up having that be just a part of the daily life. And it was something that, I remember going off and living in the city and Boston in college and telling people about my experiences back home. And they're like, wait, what? You walked around with a gun as a kid and you were shooting rabbits? And it's like, yeah, like it. And it just kind of, as I've gotten older and seen, and helped mentor new hunters and things too, I see how that's a rarity for a lot of people, and where for me it was just kind of a second nature thing. And so, I definitely count my blessings and having that, and, I can see how you are too. I really kind of wanted to find out too about how the transition went from you being a hunter and then deciding to create what was, I guess the first iteration of the Javelin Bipod, which kind of created the beginning, of your industry of Spartan precision equipment.
Yeah, it's a really good question. So I started life as a motor mechanic, probably the world's worst motor mechanic. I wanted to do art because I really like painting and stuff. Anyway, another story, another life. I will get back into it again when I've got a bit of time. But nice. But basically started life as a motor mechanic. Then got to work for an aviation company overhauling aircraft engines. Then there was a job that presented itself in marketing and sales and testing. So I was testing engines, had a brilliant boss who is the kind of guy that would have given you enough, if you screwed up for the wrong reasons, he'd annihilate you. But if you screwed up, but you screwed up for the right reasons, he'd have your back. So I had a wonderful boss in that guy and learned a lot from him, and basically got into aviation, worked for a great company, but then it was sold, and I didn't like the way it was going. Basically they were going to lay off all their engineering staff, and it was just all a bit ugly, and I thought, I've got to jump. So I went and set up my own aviation business, and again, great people looked after me, and if they hadn't been there, I wouldn't be talking to you right now, I promise. Right? You need a bit of luck. And sure. So I ended up setting up this company. We did a lot with Air New Zealand. So I spent a lot of time in the Southern Hemisphere, did that. That was great. But my DNA is not planes. And my DNA is not engines. And I did it. I enjoyed it. But it wasn't my passion, right? And then I was still taking people out hunting and bits and pieces. We bought a nose on Concord, a test nose, turned it into a piece of art. Stuck in a bearing, but we use these rare earth magnets to cover up the ugly bearing. And the gun, and this is the end of it. I have said this on numerous podcasts. And these rare earth, I said, well, that's what I've been looking for, because I got so fed up with a bloody bipod stuck in my shoulder all the time when I'm going to use it so infrequently. And moreover, when I do use it, it doesn't do what I necessarily want it to do. So I came up there, I said, make a bipod that goes on my rifle with a magnet, job done. And that was the start. That was where it really, the Heath Robinson little metal leg thing, but I used it and it worked and it was great for me. And I still say to this day, the Javelin Bipod is not the bipod for everybody. It's an out and out hunting tool. You know, if you're on a range, there's probably infinitely better things to use for that. But when you're a hunter, that bipod comes into its own, right? Because you can follow a target, you can cant over, it doesn't matter what the ground's doing, and you stick it on when you need it. And that, to me, was a hugely satisfying achievement. And it was a team effort. It wasn't, I might come up with the idea, but it took a lot of great minds to put that together. And now I look at those little Javelin bipods and I think we've nailed it. And we're selling thousands of them. And clearly people like that concept. But it is designed and aimed at, I would say, the serious hunting end of the market. You know, people that are thinking, right, I shoot off a pack a lot or blah, blah, blah. But the amount of emails I get where people have said, that saved my bacon. You know, I achieved a great shot because of your So it's hugely rewarding for me to be able to do that kind of and get that kind of feedback. And it's like my secretary. She's a vegan. She's not really into hunting or anything. I said, Paula, just think of it this way. I said, people are going to buy these bipods anyway, right? And at least the things are more likely to end up dead properly because they shot them. Oh, okay, boss, I can live with that. And actually, it was quite funny because she said, all these hunters that I probably don't think they're all so nice. They're all such nice. And I do think generally the hunting community is a very level, grounded, well-meaning a bunch of people. Obviously, there's always exceptions, but most people I meet in the hunting world, they're passionate about nature. They're passionate about doing things the right way. They just want to get on and do things. Where we're falling over, and I'm going down a rabbit hole on this one again as well, is probably not educating people well enough about what hunting really is. And what I don't like us to call it a sport. I say it's not. It's a way of life. It's a passion, right? Without hunting, I wouldn't be who I am. And
Right.
Probably you can say the same thing. And all you make it's just it's far more important to me than playing rugby or cricket, which is a social gathering and all trying to beat each other up for a few hours. Hunting's much more of a solo thing, but it's deep. It's in us, and we are humans, and we've been doing it forever and a day. So for people to now turn around and say, "Oh, I think this is," I said, I'm not interested, right? If you don't understand, I'll educate you, I'll talk to you, I'll tell you what it's about. And guess what? We will screw it up now and again. And there will be injured animals at the end of the day. But is it crueler than intensive farming? Absolutely not. Is South Africa a good answer? It's a brilliant business model. People go over there. There's no wastage. They pay a lot of money. An animal will get a chance to live like an animal should. And then somebody's going to come over and knock it over when it's probably reached its maturity. And what's more, it's all going to get eaten, right? Nothing. It's such a fantastic. And yet people that buy meat from supermarkets here say, and I said, well, you look at the wastage from a supermarket. We probably don't even use it. You know, I want the glands from the animal. I want the chicken hearts. I want all the shitty bits with the minerals in. But some of it just gets incinerated. That will never happen in Africa, right? And it'll never happen if you go and hunt your elk, because you'll package every bit away and you'll carry it away and you'll freeze it and you'll eat it or you give it to your mates.
Right.
And like what you do in America is great. You know, you can't sell the meat, but it goes to sort of poorer folk or people that are struggling. Well, that's bloody good meat. If I came to your house and said, do you want a beef steak, Rob, or an elk steak? Every day of the week, I'm going to go, can I have the elk, please? Because I just like game. So, yeah, I think collectively we can learn a lot from both sides of the pond. We can learn a lot from Europe. Scandinavians, I think, are really making a good impact because a lot of women hunt over there, and it's all about the meat. Trophies, that's a big contentious issue over here at the moment, and our UK government said it's not a trophy, it's a memory on a wall, right? And the problem is now people go, oh, it's a trophy. It's not a trophy. It's a memory on a wall to remember an amazing experience. The animal's still eaten. So, and guess what? It's paying for a lot of people, right? Guides, families, blah, blah, blah. So we're all now about basically the image rather than about result. And in politics, it's the same. It's all about the image and what you try, rather than, what's really important. I write to our government over here, and it's just an old man thing every few months ago. I come back, I said, there's potholes in the roads, the mobile phone system. I will spend a lot of time in third world countries. Well, guess what? I can't see the difference anymore, other than their roads are better and their telephones work, right? So what's going on? Meanwhile, you're spending bucket loads of money, giving money to your mates to decide which statue needs to come down because they don't fit we got mad, haven't we?
Yeah, no, you're right on with that. And I think that's something I've talked to a lot of folks about, like the perceptions of, and like, especially like the idea in the US, we have 5% people hunt, and you have like 87% around that number of support for that. You go to like trophy hunting and that number drops way off, where it's, my buddies and I, we talk about like the trophy for us is the meal that we get to share with our friends and family. And do we have some antlers on the wall? Well, yeah, because we're going to save everything. And so it's not about like, oh, look, I killed this buck just for this, this 18-inch spread. Yeah.
That's what they perceive. And I think that's what we need to work on and say the trophy is, if
the experience.
I've taken a couple of vegans out and that, real anti, and they finish the day. I'm not saying they're going to go and pick a rifle and go and hunt something, but they got it. Yep. I did an adequate job and explained. They go, oh, I'm much better educated now. Yeah. I can go away with something tangible. And I think if we can do that a bit more, our future's a little bit more certain. But in the UK, getting back to what I originally said, when you've got 70 million people, such a tiny landmass, it's inevitable it's the way it is over here. It just wouldn't work another way. But there's probably small things we could do to impact that to some extent, where we give certain amount of people an opportunity to get exposed to that. And people don't go back to that. When they go and flavor hunting, right, from a young, we love it. And women love it. And it's great. And kids love it. And I think, a kid will never forget. He or she will never forget the first time they've been out hunting with their dad or a friend or whatever. Yeah. And that memory is embedded. And that's what being human's all about. And now all we seem to be worried about is what sex we are, what toilet we go in. And we just don't, there's not enough going on in people's lives. So they start worrying about these ridiculously stupid things, which, frankly, I'm not interested in. I'm just not interested in what you are or who you are. I don't care. I just want to live my life doing what I want to do and what I enjoy and what being human's all about. And I think hunting is a fundamental part of what we are.
Well, it's huge. It has so many things about just getting out there, connecting with this real world experience of like all these amazing animals you get to see. I mean, we'll get into your systems here in a minute, but like I'm going out there and with my camera and just capturing videos and pictures of just the sheer beauty of being in the outdoors. I'm taking more shots with my camera than I am with my rifle. And as I get older, and I'm more selective on what I'm doing and things too, it's just about being out there. Like you said, I can go 8 days in a huge hunt and not take an animal. And I feel just as, that experience is the trophy of that. It's not a matter of having, and now I want, a bunch of fresh meat in my freezer. Don't get me wrong. But, I want to like have that experience and, get my daughters involved and bring my wife out, my friends, and kind of it's so fulfilling. And I think when people, like you said too, when you take that time to take, like you did with the vegans, or like, you're taking people out and you educate them on that, they see it, they understand it. And I think that's a lot of things in the world anyway. It's just like you have two conflicting ideas, but if you can sit down and understand where someone comes from, sitting in their shoes, then you can at least you might not agree with it, you might not support it, but you'll at least understand it. And you can kind of have a greater, 360 view of the world of like, oh, that's how they see it. I can see that now. I'm not going to subscribe to it, or maybe you end up bringing those people along. Hey, I do want to put meat in my freezer. Oh, I saw what actually happens at a chicken farm. I don't want to do that. I mean, in the US, it was like, I think the number was like 90% of chicken inspectors don't eat chicken. There's a reason.
Yeah. And absolutely, and I couldn't put it better myself. You've just nailed it, really, what I sort of aspire to. And I think hunting actually at the end of the day is a community thing. You might do it as a solo thing, but it ends up with a community because it ends up with you sharing food around. And I think many of the problems in society today are the fact is we don't have community. We've lost community. We've got this bloody COVID thing and everybody's living on their own and doing, people don't know how to communicate so well anymore. And I think there's nothing more satisfying. You'll get this. You've been out hunting all day. Somebody's got something. Doesn't matter who's got it. You sit around a fire in the evening, and you talk about it over a glass of wine, beer, whatever, and fire, and it's all crackling off in Africa or in Europe or whatever. Isn't that magical? And to me, it doesn't get any better than that. And I feel sorry for people that don't get to experience those things. So I get quite keen to say, get out and try it, guys. And that's my frustration in the UK and that's why I say I'm such a fan of what you've got in the States. And you know what? People are embracing it. And a lot of people, I think Renella's brother sort of was complaining and said too many people are getting into it now. And I thought, well, I can see both sides of that fence, right? I can understand his upset about that, but it's good that they are doing that, and it's keeping it going, it's keeping it alive. And guess what? Once they got the bug, they're going to be back every year, and they might shoot an elk once every 8 years, but they're all out there actively. I went out with Ian Harrison from Recoil magazine in Colorado a few years back. Lovely bloke. We had an elk. We never got an elk. And then we went really into the backcountry. We did a lot. And we came back and this family had just shot one by the side of the road. And I thought, they hadn't gone more than a quarter. But good luck to them. Yeah. Right? They've done it. And they were all out there butchering out and things. It's pretty cool. Yeah, it's super cool. And my son's off to Colorado, I think, this weekend. And he was out guiding last year at a private lodge and helping out, and he's got the bug. He's just this is just so cool out here to be able to do things like that. And I say to him, you've got so much more opportunity on your side of the pond in many ways than we do here. And there's some great things in the UK. Don't get me, I'm not a UK hater, but I do get frustrated with its limitations.
Sure. Well, and you just mentioned like him doing some guiding work. You did guiding work as well. Is that correct?
Yeah. I used to take a lot of people out and love it. And I've got that stage now. I think we all start life as murderers. You turn into a hunter, right? And as you get older, and now for me, I'll get a lot more satisfaction probably out of taking somebody out and getting them into an elk or getting them into a deer or whatever. Yeah. And that's hugely rewarding for me. That's my happy spot, really. Yep. I don't need to pull the trigger, right? I'm happy to go hunting and but I really get a big buzz out of taking somebody and seeing the excitement and the joy they get out of it, because I get that as well. And I just think that's fantastic. And I think that's a hunting thing. And I think that happens with a lot of hunters.
I think so too. I mean, I'm in that stage as well. I want to be a mentor because I was mentored. I think about the old gentleman who taught me and my family and my uncle and people who took the time to be very patient with me, teach me the right way, teach me about ethics, responsibilities, morals, honesty, integrity, all the things that are encompassed in, I think, being like a true hunter and developing into that stage of like that. And that's just something that kind of encapsulates your whole life too, the lessons you learn in the field, right? And
that mentor will never go away from you, will he?
Never, never.
And I had a really lovely old Scottish guy that got me into hunting, and the stupid things that I used to do with him. But he was wonderful because he'd make you not feel stupid. He'd make sure you didn't make that stupid mistake again, and he'd bang it home. But he was the kind of guy that would open his mouth when it was necessary and wouldn't waste his time opening his mouth when it was. But just a superhuman being, and sadly no longer with us. But I learnt so much from him, and he was like an authority. So that's been a part of my growing up process, and it will be the same for you.
Yeah, and people are probably at that stage now where they're talking about you in that same way as you bring people under your wings and you're using those lessons that you've learned. And that's like the continuation, that of that type of lifestyle. And it's important that, there's some guys I work with here that the Outdoor Stewards of Conservation Foundation, and they have a thing about come with. It's like the idea of like bring people with you and like be able to share this, because when people understand it, in US here too, it's like the hunters and the folks who are doing fishing and target shooting, all the excise tax and the Pittman-Robertson Act, like all the money that goes in when people are going out and seeing, beautiful wildlife, and they're going out to state parks and national parks and wilderness areas. It's really the money that, like, that you say that isn't necessarily there in the UK. It's like, that's what is providing that for the public to be able to appreciate that. And so it's like, the hunting is ingrained in our being able to keep this way of life and our wildlife in the US. And, that's a model that has worked really well for us. And it's a model that doesn't work everywhere, but there is, this lifestyle provides, more than just, meat on the table or the trophy on the wall, right?
It's so much more. And
so
what I was saying, you guys have nailed that. And I don't know the details well enough. And I'm sure if we dig deeply, there'd be issues and there'd be,
sure.
But generally, you're so way ahead. The fact I've got a lovely little story. I came into the States once to go hunting for elk, and again, another unsuccessful mission, unsuccessful in the hunt, but still a fantastic trip.
Yep.
And the immigration law officer said to me, "What are you here for, Mr. Gear?" And I said, "Well, I'm coming to hear out. I paid my $700, got my tag." And he shook my hand and he said, "Well, thank you for putting some money into this, and I wish that would never happen here. That would never. I could come through the UK immigration a million times and I would never get that kind of response." So I thought, how wonderful. This guy sort of shook my hand and said, "No, good to see you, best of luck." And I thought, that's absolutely epic. And so I'm a big fan of what you've got, going on there. And I think it's just, yes, things can always be better, but it works. And what's important is so much of the money goes straight back in, as you've said, your river systems. The States is the only place on the planet. You think where I've been hunting all over the world. The States is the only place on the planet where I've been asked to show a license. And it's happened to me like 3 times. So it works. Have you got your ticket, Mr. Git? Blah, blah, blah. Yeah, I have. Oh, good. On your way. But you think of all the hunting I've done in the UK and all the I've never had anybody stop me in a populated place like this. I've never had anybody say, "Can I have a look at your firearms license, Mr. Gear?" Right? It doesn't happen. So that's the difference. Yeah.
Wow. Well,
just crazy.
I want to get back into talking about the gear that you've produced and created. And, I figure we can just talk a little bit about the Javelin Bipod. I know we kind of briefly touched on before. I got one here. This is in the FHF Aspis case here. But, I want you to kind of walk folks through about the idea of how your modular systems, fully work. I know we kind of briefly touched on it, but I kind of want to go a little more in depth.
Yeah.
Because like for me, I used to have, and it was a great bipod for what it was. I've used Harris, I've used Atlas, but having it like attached to, your actual rifle, it's something that can be cumbersome. And, until I saw your system, I never saw anything that was removable, that was modular in this way, to where I didn't have to have this against my shoulder, extra weight. And so this was a game changer for me. And then all the systems that I could use for optics and binoculars and everything. But I really want you to kind of walk through the idea of your different, the javelins and the different variations, and kind of tell people about what it is that, that these do and how they separate themselves from, other types of bipods that are out there.
A great question. So basically, I just come at it from a different angle. So much of the shooting I'll do in the UK particularly will be from standing sticks. Mm-hmm. So a bipod might not necessarily be my first tool that I'll go for. Right. But I want to keep the real estate under the rifle platform void of anything, right? So it's not cluttered, it's easy to get out, it doesn't get stuck in anything, because you all know as well as I do, you can put that bipod in quicker than I can drop 2 legs on a normal bipod, and more quietly if you've done it a few times.
And to get them even and get them, sure.
So a couple of fundamental issues I have with bipods is the ground ain't always flat. Right. It's often like this, and bipods don't have much cant. And then, so I thought, well, if we nail the cant issue, and here's one Unknown Munitions did for me in Orange, which is really good, because if you do drop them, it's very easy to see.
You're going to find that one, yeah.
Reach out to Unknown Munitions, who does a brilliant job in it. I think it's fantastic. But having that cant that you can move, so it doesn't matter what the ground's doing, you've still got a stable, straight platform's great. And the fact, because the magnet's circular, it means that your rifle can orbit around the bipod. 2 fundamentally important things for a hunter, not so necessary for a target shooter. The next thing for me, being a climber, was everything I carry is on me. So I've always been really driven by keeping weight to a minimum and having that modularity where if I can make one product do more than one job, like a Leatherman tool, for example, I don't need to take a knife if I've got a pair of pliers and Leatherman. Those kind of things really appeal to me, as long as they're not gimmick approaches. Because a lot of companies do it and I think, well, I'm never going to use that. It's not necessary. So the whole Spartan system is really Lego, that you use the Lego bits that best serve you do not need it all. I spend my life saying to people, you don't need that system, and that you pick the one that best serves your needs. So we have a host of bipods, but these are what I call the hunting bipods. We do what I call, we do other bipods that people hunt with, but I wouldn't personally hunt with them because that's not the way I'm made. So weight, strength, and reliability are the kind of things, because I don't want our product screwing up your hunt, right? So I get things built as well as we can do it. And they can always be better, but honestly, they are bomb-proof little tools. We don't get many complaints about people lose them. That can happen. But thanks to that wonderful little case that our dear friends at FHF have made, and they've nailed it, that little Aspis case, lives under your bino caddy. Why wouldn't you have it? So It's a fantastic little tool. So the bipod is basically the key element, but then you've got things like the Sentinel and the Ascent tripods, which they turn into your trekking poles very easily. You can have a handle. I was showing you earlier, we've even done, I'm not selling this unless somebody goes, because I don't want any stupid people using it, but to be able to do that on my trekking pole, a little lightweight arrest axe is pretty cool. And this has got a snowshoe on it. And, the stuff is bomb-proof.
And that's part of your tripod. That's one of the legs.
That is one leg. That's one leg on our tripod.
Which can be a trekking pole. And now you have a new use for it. So multiple uses.
Yeah. So you can take it as far or as little as you want to.
Right.
But the tripod is really, both the tripod and the Sentinel, first and foremost, the shooting support systems. Mm-hmm. Because of that magnetic attachment, when you're locked in, you're really solid, right? From a hunting, but you've still got movement. You can still orbit. So depending on your application, if you're a mountain hunter, really the Ascent is where you want to go, because it offers all the features of a conventional tripod plus some, namely trekking modes and such like. If you're hunting in mainland Europe, or you're wild boar hunting, or you go to Africa, I'd say the Sentinel, not the Sentinel's probably the tool to use, because that doesn't have the same capabilities as the Ascent. You can't open the legs up completely, but as a hunting system, it's fantastic. And I run that thing on 2 legs 90% of the time. I'm only using 2 legs because it's super quick. So if I'm woodland hunting here, deer management, that is the tool. So it's like a giant bipod. But so that same hole that your bipod goes into, you can now put your Sentinel in, right, super quick, run it on 2 legs. You've got a standing platform. You lock it back. You can load the Sentinel. So you really are in a comfortable position, but you can track targets. You can follow. It's a super cool tool, but it's not a mountain hunter's tool. And then if you want the versatility of the mountain, then you've really got to go for the Ascent, because then you can shoot prone. It manages optics much better, because the Ascent has a what we call the Davos Pro head on, which is more like a fluid head. You had one there, yeah. So you've got your friction ring on the here, and then you've got your locking ring around the outside, and then you can orbit. So it's a very versatile little head unit. And what's more, you don't even need our tripod. You can put that on anybody's tripod. You can put that on a G clamp. You can run it in a high seat, a tree stand. So you can even
the G clamp.
That's it. And you can even stick that on your window. You can run optics from
deer blind. Yep.
Yeah. A lot of disabled. I was in Oregon recently. There was 3 disabled kids, and we set them up with these on their wheelchairs, and they were just so they could hold the rifles. You know, just they said, "Oh, yeah, that's quite nice actually," because the parents were completely getting it. Said, "I couldn't get my lad to do this, and now I can." And yeah, it's pretty cool. So I like to take some pride in the fact that I haven't yet been presented with a situation where I can't provide a stable platform, right? We'll spend a fortune on optics, we'll spend a fortune on rifles, but the soft jelly bit in between us, we don't necessarily worry so much about the stability there. And I've screwed up enough shots now to know I like my dead things dead.
Yeah.
So if I can get 2 legs, 3 legs, or platform on that to support me, I'm always going to use it. Yeah, and I think it's so valuable. And if you can finish the day on a high and say the elk's down, it's done, the bear's done, the wolf or whatever, and it's all packaged and wrapped, you know, we're all happier. So I'm just increasing your game, really, your chance of a successful result. And I'm providing when the gear's that light, it's difficult not to justify taking it. It might be too expensive, but we do an entry-level bipod, the Javelin Light. Very simple. I still use them. If you're the kind of guy that's cutting a toothbrush in half, the Javelin Light's probably where you want to be because it weighs nothing. You know, it's like it's feather light. It doesn't have the capabilities of the Pro Hunt TAC bipod, but it's still a really useful little tool. And guess what? It's a damn sight better than not having a bipod.
Yeah.
Right?
And each one of these serves its purpose and that they can all be great for you. Or if you want that, it's about which one is going to fit what your ultimate needs are, right?
You pick your medicine.
Yeah.
And so from the hunting family, I'm pretty comfortable where we are. Now I've got a couple of new products coming out, probably towards the end of this year, next year, which I'm super excited. Probably more European, African focused than the US, maybe on the East. They'll work very well, but some really cool, stupid, simple stuff. But actually nobody's done it before. And I thought, yeah, this will work. And I've been really, really excited about where that's going. And not particularly expensive products, but very functional. So that's something I'm working on right now. And then we're moving, because we've been approached by a lot of military units, normally the little guys, little units like our SAS guys or yours, but they're using a lot of our stuff. So we've developed sort of more of a military defense range of products, and we're segueing so we've set up another little business to support that. And it's embryonic at the moment, but some of the products migrate over and others don't, because their drivers are different, and so we've made some bipods that will engage on the rifle but will lock on, but you can still remove them. So we patented some new systems there. Super excited about that. Some of that will definitely migrate into the hunting environment. So people that are carrying chassis rifles, for example, this stuff really will work very well with it. So there'll be 2 systems. You'll have the classic mag switch system, the Javelin system, and then you'll have another system coming out. And both have got their pros and both have got their cons. As a hunter, am I going to come away from this? No, I'm absolutely not, because the beauty of this is it's so simple. It's just on and off when I need it. And it doesn't matter if I'm running a tripod or a bipod. Within seconds, I can I can find the right platform. And I can run that tripod on 2, 3, 4, or 5 legs. The bipods are obviously just on 2 legs, but the versatility, the options it gives me are pretty mega.
But absolutely. And I mean, whenever you order one of the javelins here, there is a female adapter which is going to go on the bottom of your rifle.
Yeah.
You have some for pick rails, you have some for swivel studs that'll fit right in there.
Yeah.
And so I've gotten multiple ones for multiple rifles. And so that means I can use this one piece of equipment, and I have the female counterpart that's going to go on here on the bottom of my rifle. And that is something that you don't need to have before, if you wanted to have a bipod on and have it around, you could move it to one rifle or another. But if you have a couple buddies and someone's using your rifle, well, you each have to have a bipod, or you're going to have your own set of shooting sticks that's going to be per individual. Well, we do like a lot of hog hunting, right? And so at nighttime, you can hunt them at night. We have thermal optics. Other people, are going out and using the same thing. Now you have a tripod, and you can use your one of your Davis Pro heads or Davis head. It's like, or Davros. And so you have this ability then to just quickly put something on there. It's removable whenever you want it, whether the bipod, but that modularity of being able to have one rifle like system, that adapter. And there's another one that I recently picked up, the heavy duty optics adapter.
Oh yeah.
And being able to have this on that actual, being able to have my camera and have this set up too with Davros, it's like that has been a game changer here. Super lightweight, but I have this on the bottom of my camera, or you can have your spotting scope, and being able to have that versatility and something that's so quick to put on and off. I don't need to take as many tools with me into the stand or on a hunt. It's amazing.
And you've nailed it. It's less tools doing more.
Yes.
So it might take a bit of time. If I'm running this as trekking poles, I obviously don't have my tripod. But often in a mountain environment, you've got plenty of time. You're glassing, you spot your animal, and you've got time to set up. But I think that's really a happy place for the mountain hunters. So I want to try and emulate that now for the military and defense side with those things as well. So for managing foxes and predators, often when you go out at night with a lamp, right, and you have a guy in the back of the truck shooting the predators. So we have a little rubber sucker unit that the Davros can screw straight on the top. So you just stick that thing on the back of the car, on the vehicle, and you've got a little, like a machine gun post. It's fantastic. So you're super stable. So you take the Davros, the rubber. So we've just come out with these fly rod holders that use them as well, and they stick anywhere. So you stick them on, stick the Davros on top, and then you've instantly got a socket to shoot from a vehicle. It's pretty cool. So again, it's another option that most people are never ever going to need, but it's there should you need to. But there's nothing stopping you putting your spotting scope on there as well, and doing everything else.
Or your binoculars as well. Yeah, I mean, the cameras. There's no limitation of what you're going to use in the field that you can use with the Spartan precision equipment. I mean, they are all together. You even have one for like the iPhone, and so for folks who want to put that on their tripod and have a steady picture, if you're making your videos for social media or whatever it is, man, it's like there is something for everybody here.
I always say to people, I think we're pretty good at getting stuff designed and made. We're just not necessarily very good at telling people how it works. And I get that all the time, saying, I didn't know you could do this. And we often get a lot of feedback from customers saying, I've learned how to, they're using it in a different way, how we've used it. So we've learned a lot. We've got a lot of feedback from that. It's good. And the other thing that I think we at Spartan are good at doing is we don't want to conquer the world. We know what we're good at doing. But we like to work with like-minded companies, small, passionate. So like Kifaru, like FHF, like we've got reached out to company, another American, ASIAC. He's making us these beautiful little bino holders that engage with our magnet system. So, we don't want to beat people up. We'd rather join and have a bigger community of good companies. And like Paul, FHF nailed that holster. Yeah. We've done them. We've tried them. We've still got a few for sale. But I always say to people, FHFs are better, actually. So and now we even buy FHFs because they just. So if you work with people that are good at what they do, I think you really build a strong community then. And if you stick to what you're good at doing, and allow others to fill in the blanks of what you're not at, you can really make quite a formidable team. And so I'm pretty proud about that.
No, that is 100% correct. I mean, I'm never going to try to create the wheel on my own. It's like, if there's someone who has something better, I'm going to use that idea. And like, when I think about the idea of like precision equipment, for me, I've been trying to the last probably 5 years since I got into long range shooting and then reloading. And this idea about, precision equipment, it's to, fulfill that ultimate need of being the most ethical, strong, focused minded shooter that I can be, that I have the equipment, that I know it's going to do the right job, and that I'm going to do the best that I can on the animal. So like you said, you want your dead deer dead. I don't want to injure any animals when I'm teaching people, when I'm mentoring folks. I want to have the best equipment to be able to show them. And this stuff might not be entry level for people, but there's options too. It's like, you have, two different options. You can go ahead and buy the thing that's going to have way more precision, and but you have something that'll work just as well, and it's going to be better than something you're going to buy off the shelf that's maybe just made in China that could break really quickly. Like, you have precision equipment for precision needs for a reason.
And you're never going to get me hard selling somebody something that I'll sell more. That I'd say, unless you're a mountain hunter, you don't need the Davros Pro. The Davros, I will use the Davros, and actually, in the right environment, the Davros is better because it's quicker and it's simpler. The Davros Pro has its place, so it's just understanding those things. But we could talk about those kind of things for a long time. It's just that the journey is great fun. Developing products in an industry or something that I'm absolutely passionate about I feel is really rewarding. And because I'm living it, doing it, and breathing it, there's a lot of design engineers that are brilliant design engineers, but they don't necessarily do enough outdoor time to actually, they might design something and say, well, you've overcomplicated that. Or does it really, what have you done that for? But I'm the other way around. I spend much more time out in the mountains and the woodlands and blah, 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 working. And I want, the answer that I'm trying to find is the simplest tool to do the job, that's got less knobs, less buttons, less things to go wrong, good functionality, good quality materials, well machined. Those are my drivers. And if I can get that right, then most people are happy, as long as they understand the dynamics of what they want. They don't want to, if they buy the wrong product, and that can happen, and say, well, it's not really what you want. And that's why there's lots of pieces in the Spartan Lego shop now, to make sure that we can, because there is not one product that will do everything well. I say it's a bit like a 308 rifle. It's a good rifle, but if you really know what you want to, a good caliber, but if you really know what you want to do, there's always going to be something that will outperform it. But as a general, it'll do everything okay. And I think Spartans come away from that and it's more like specialist athletes. The Javelin is a specific tool, as is the Ascent, as is, they're different tools for different jobs. I think we will come out with some more generic products that will meet more requirements, more cost effective, but they won't be as specialist, but they'll do a good job for a lot of people.
So before we kind of wrap up, I have a couple other questions about, like, as you're, continuing to expand. I know there was a time where you were talking about really, you're developing more, relationships in the U.S., but this is obviously a huge area where folks are going to be using this. Like you said, there's way more people in the U.S. that are hunting than UK, and there's other places in the world where you have business. But are you moving into the idea of kind of building something a little bit larger in the U.S.?
Yeah, I make no secret about it. It's where we want to end up.
Yep.
I think Spartan will not reach its full potential until it's honed in the USA. I'm in the UK because that's where we live. For the defense business, it's different, but I think Spartan needs to be based in the US. And we're not quite big enough or ready enough for that yet, I don't think. And I think probably somebody might come along. We work very well with a lot of much bigger companies. We've got a great relationship with Primus that are now selling Primus trigger sticks with the Spartan system on the top. So that's huge for us.
Yeah.
You know, it's because that gets us out there and it puts us in all the key stores. And there's a couple of other large rifle manufacturers that we're doing some stuff with at the moment. But basically, those gunsmith adapters, not the classic adapter, but the ones that are actually bonded into the stocks. Every German rifle manufacturer now, as of the end of this year, will offer a rifle with those adapters built into the stocks. That's huge because 7 years ago, I was told I'd never sell a bipod in Germany. So it's become an industry standard. And I think if we can emulate that in America and in the next 2 or 3 years, I can see that it's already sort of spooling up. That's huge for us because so that our IP is very valuable to us because we're the only people that have got the IP to make that system. Yep. And we need to harvest that. And I think if we can, we'll let any rifle manufacturer fit those gunsmiths at no charge because it's obviously in our interest. And now people like big companies, well-respected companies like Primus are doing it. It makes it more affordable because Primus is at a different end. They make an affordable system that's great. It works. It's popular, and they sell hundreds of thousands of them. So it's an exciting time for us. And I'm really, really very keen to see what happens in the next 2 to 3 years. But I mean, I could be wrong, but I feel we're going in the right way. But I would love to be sitting on your side of the pond doing a podcast with you rather than in the UK. And I make no secret about that because that northwest part of the States is very appealing to me. Lots of space, not so many people. I don't need a lot. I'm very easy to keep happy, but a small little hut. But I can look out the window and see an elk or a bear or whatever. It's pretty appealing.
Well, I'm going to have to bring you down to Texas and we'll have some bucks and some hogs we'll go after too. So
I would enjoy that immensely.
That would be wonderful.
Good.
Well, the last thing I kind of wanted to ask you, and I've been asking a lot of my guests this, in, really like the idea of like, what is it that you want your legacy to be as far as, professionally with your business and personally? What is it that you want to be remembered for and to leave behind, as your legacy?
I think that's an excellent question. I think being an inventor is something that really sort of fits in, and inventing products that put smiles on people's faces because it makes their job easier. Mm-hmm. That is hugely rewarding. The guy that taught me to hunt, he died, he's dead sadly, but he saw the embryonic Spartan bipods and he knew his stuff. And he said, "You're onto a winner with this, Rob." And I so upset that he's not here to see where we are with it now because he was my biggest fan. He was also my biggest critic. If I got something wrong, he wouldn't, but that's why I respected him. It was great. But big fan of what we did. And I think feeling that I've enabled people to shoot animals more ethically is quite rewarding. I like to know that we all screw it up from time to time, but I like to know if somebody's going to pull the trigger and you're going to kill something, let's at least do it as well as we possibly can. There's plenty of things that can go wrong, but on our systems, your chances are improved immensely. So for me, that sits rather well.
That's a wonderful answer. And as we close out, if you could just tell people, what's the best place to find you, your website, how can people follow you on social media? What are the socials there that they can follow? So
Javelin Bipod, there's Spartan Precision Equipment's the Instagram. I have my own little mad Instagram, Spartan Mr. G, I think it is, or Mr. G at Spartan. But the website is, Javelin Bipod. If they put javelinbipod.com, they get into there. There's some great companies in the States selling the products now. We've got Paul Happy Antelope, sell it on Amazon. They're doing a great job. They sell lots of them. And the thing is, we now need fulfillment in the US. So I'm working with a few US companies now. So that will make life a bit easier. But all these things, being a little company, we are a little company, they take time to spool up because we just don't have the money or the resources to go, right, we'll chuck $500,000 at this and $500,000 at that. Sure. But we get there. But and I think there's some very, very good bricks and mortar stores now stocking our products on your side of the pond. Brandy Rock Canyon sell it, Colorado. And I think maybe not right now, but Shields will probably be stocking the products in the coming few months, which would be very cool. Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Rob, I want to thank you so much for joining me today. I definitely, and as you have some future developments and things you want to announce, I'd welcome you back anytime to talk about those. But thank you for taking the time, kind of walking our listeners through your wonderful products. I really appreciate it.
Well, I've enjoyed it immensely. So really nice to meet up, and I'd love to come back. Just give me a shout anytime.
Sounds good, man. Definitely will do. You have a good one.
All right. Have a good evening. Oh, have a good afternoon, should I say? It's a bit early over
Thank
there.
you.
All right. Cheers.
Cheers.